Hello, hello, hello. Good morning from Maike. If you've been reading up on the latest developments in Gen AI, agentic AI, you might have come across a little tweet from Andrew Karpathy, one of the ex-founders of OpenAI. I think he was chief research there, talking about how he created an LLM-based knowledge base based on a large collection of research articles, like his raw data that he feeds into an LLM, and next, the LLM kind of builds a metadata and wiki layer on top of that, which you can query, for instance, through Obsidian or through a custom made chat user interface. Well, I've got a little bit of a problem with calling that knowledge, but that's for another video. But I thought, well, I've got this whole like digital garden, right? This Mayan AI, where I have my own articles that I wrote, like 100% my. I have field notes and jottings. Lots of this is my thoughts, my synthesis of things that I find on the internet. And especially the articles are like long reads where I put a lot of time, effort, and joy in actually writing down my perspective. And I think I've got about 100 items in this garden, varying from 100% Micah to co created with Gen AI. Co creation for me is when I've already done all the writing and the thinking, but for instance, I want to do an experiment or a project on it, and all these project documents like reports and wrap ups and little summaries, instructions. That's typically where I find it's okay to use Gen AI because the source is always my knowledge and I'm always there in the loop. So that's just to explain a little bit like, hey, what's the difference between me writing, thinking, reading, listening 100%, and where I do see a role for AI? Because to be honest, you'd be stupid not to use AI in this day and age. Just really know what to use it for. I've got my own personal manifesto, which I can share with you in a later video. But for now, yes, I've got a whole rich source of my own thinking, my own writing, my own reading. Why not feed that into Karpathy's system and rebuild a Micah wiki based on his method? Well, that's what I did, and this is what it came up with. Um, so what we see here on the left-hand side are entities that are extracted. Karpathy focuses on people, tools and tech and concepts, which is a shame in my opinion because my knowledge garden is so much richer. I mean, I've got a whole metadata tool running in the background where I extract triples. I go from wide to narrow and wide again. I do entity extraction, tag extraction, but all that is curated by me. So I'm defining the facets, as it were, of what my knowledge architecture should look like. And therefore, it's very suitable for me and my own personal thoughts. Then again, I've got a different objective than Karpathy. Karpathy wants a research base with a large coverage. I want a space to think my own personal thoughts and do that in public and share it with you. However, so I fed it my whole garden as raw data and let Karpathy's method do the work. And what you get here is really interesting. And I must say, it is quite useful. So if we look, for instance, at the concepts, here you can definitely see some kind of Micah-esque trends here. Let's have a look at, for instance, oh, well, designing for doubt. So it has extracted that as an entity, as a concept. And what the LLM has done is summarizing what designing for doubt is. It's Micah's design approach for LLM-based interfaces, building skepticism, source tracking, and fact-checking capacity into the interface rather than relying on users to bring their own critical faculties. Because as we all know, we don't. Given that users are cognitively lazy and easily anthropomorphized, the interface must do some of the epistemic work. Well, this is pretty accurate. This is indeed what I mean with designing for doubt. No wonder, because of course the underlying source material is my presentation, are my articles. Then it also decided to kind of give a little background on how I use this concept. So it's my main design prescription arising from a critique of LLMs, true. it shows me where in my garden this concept appears. And of course, this is really interesting because I manually, well, I auto tag all my articles, but I manually review and enrich that metadata with my own insights. So as you can see here, yeah, it pops up in these three articles. And in related concepts, you can definitely see the workings of my triple store, because apart from extracting tags, I also extract triples. So subject, object, subject, predicate, subject, verb, object. As you can see, indifference to truth counters indifference to truth. This is interesting. Cognitive laziness, the user. Oh, these are the concepts, right? So designing for doubt counters indifference to truth. Cognitive laziness. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is something that I don't have in my garden. So I think that related concepts kind of stem from my triples. I need to check. But the open questions is Andrew Karpathy's method of actively questioning what's in the database and especially what's not there in the raw collection of data and information. Um, and of course, these are interesting questions for me, and these could definitely serve as ideas for further exploration. This is something that I do in Claude Code like manually, but having this as an integral part of this, basically this entity model, I guess, because that's what it um, is a nice thing to have. Something that Karpathy doesn't specify in detail, but I thought might be handy, is to have a capability to ask questions. For instance, what's the future of conversation design? And should we still design interfaces in the future? If so, should they be in the form of a dialogue? And when I ask, as you can see, I made this an asking tool, not necessarily a chatbot, because in this context, I don't really like chatbots. I don't want to have a conversation. I want insights and answers. Mind you, it's still on my local host, so it's not optimized for speed yet, which is nice. It's a little bit of friction too. Okay, answer. Micah's work doesn't offer a single answer to this, but it builds a fairly clear position across several articles. Let me reconstruct it. It's interesting, right? Because Karpathy says, hey, you don't need RAG anymore. But I think he's assuming you don't need a vector database and chunking anymore. Of course, this is still RAG if you talk about retrieval augmented generation. It is still retrieving data from the source, just not from a vector database. And that's, of course, another question, like define RAG, right? Anything that you enrich your context with in this sense is RAG. Is conversation okay? The conversation metaphor is under pressure, but not dead. This is definitely my point of view. I don't hear a lot of other people talking about that. I don't conclude that it's finished, but is the metaphor still fit for purpose? And this is my ongoing research. Why it's always been imperfect for chatbots? Well, the alternative isn't no interface, it's better metaphors. True. I suggest a few already. I'm working on them. Conversation designers still belong, but the discipline needs to examine itself, which of course is also not a very strange point of view coming from technical writing and business analysis. This is very true. My concern is indeed that what we've been taught to be good conversation design, persona, warm relational tone, actually amplify anthropomorphism and indifference to truth rather than countering them, because we're coming from a completely different age where it was pretty obvious that we were not talking to humans. Yes, I'm very interested in this emotional labor argument. Like every time we engage with a very personable chatbot, we have to do emotional work and also kind of distance ourselves from it. Um, well, I must say, this is not bad at all. And would I give this to someone else? Probably not. But for my own personal kind of I mean, my default state is to diverge. I'm just like a little butterfly net, right? I'm like, oh, butterfly, oh, look, phoneme, oh, look this, oh, look that. I want to chase everything. I want to study everything. And I do feel that this kind of converges stuff again and helps me kind of focus on next steps, on the things that I'm already doing. So I'll definitely integrate this in my garden as a personal exploration tool, probably. What I also learned from this is that, of course, Karpathy, being a techie, has a very structured approach on how to do this. And yes, I have built routines and skills for automatic tag extraction, but I also felt that there was still something missing there. Like not everything was tied together very well yet. So that's another thing I've done. I noticed that some of my articles in the garden didn't have extended metadata yet. For instance, if we look at this one, here's an article. As you can see, I have extensive backlinking and related articles. But if we go to what I call the mycelium, which is basically the substrate where all the connections are created, there's not a lot happening here. There's only tags. Whereas if I look at other articles, let's see if I can find one that has some already. Uh, ba, 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 ba. I just started to enrich that mycelium by adding relations from my triple store. So conversation metaphor, subject, breaks down for Gen AI. So these are like triples with a very controlled vocabulary. But I didn't automate that to the level that Claude automatically did this for all my articles because I want to be in the loop, right? I need to review this because sometimes I change these triple because they don't make sense. The same for like what's the argument of this post? What are the themes and things like that? So it was already there, but I am so obsessed by doing everything myself that I probably didn't hand off enough to Claude Code already. And the Karpathy wiki actually inspired me to build a little interface for that, where I can run the skill that I created automatically. And then once it's finished, it will not implement the changes, so add the new tags and metadata and triples, but it will give me a proposal to review. And this I thought was pretty cool. Look at this. This is my article. It will give me the central argument. Then it will give me the thematic statements, which I do by thematic analysis from social sciences. I can read them. I can, check them off or uncheck them if I don't want them. I can see the tags that it's suggesting, like the extra tags, the topics. Um, this is pretty cool. The association. So this will be the semantic triples. This is very controlled, so we get a nice little web. I mean, honestly, this is the kind of metadata manager dashboard that I've been dreaming of for years. And this is so freaking amazing with Claude Code. It's just doing it. It's just, and the thing is, this is all mine. I know exactly what this is about because I wrote the source. It's my thinking, it's my knowledge. And that's also why I don't see the point of kind of hoarding all that and keeping it to yourself because as long as you haven't done the work, the service structure, so the service structure, the actual articles, and you having a whole collection of that is nothing because you haven't done the thinking yet. You haven't done the knowledge synthesis yet. I did. This is my stuff. This is my brain on the screen. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. Occurrence candidates, articles that could be linked. Oh, nice. Missing links. Yes. Open questions. Research prompts from past three. Keep the ones worth investigating. It's checking my backlog. This is cool because in my Claude Code, I do keep like a central backlog, and my sessions are actually the work sessions. And after each backlog, or after each session, I hand over to the backlog again. So every session, when I wrap it up, the results are in the backlog, and I can start a new session. Under construction, suggest. Okay, cool. I think I'd love to have all of this as mycelium for the article. So let's just apply accepted. And it's doing it for me. Done. Article front matter, wiki rebuild. And this is, of course, cool. And that is the one thing I love about Karpathy's method. The open questions actually feed back into the wiki. So this is like the self-growing aspect where you keep extending your knowledge quest because you keep opening new questions based on what you wrote already. I can see a big risk rising here. If you remember, I didn't choose the garden metaphor by chance. That was a very deliberate choice because the one big risk, of course, here is if you keep generating and generating and generating, it becomes weeds. It just grows and grows, but there's no intention, there's no direction. And of course, that's always the trade off. How wild and natural do you want your garden to be versus how curated do you want it to be? Um, that's something for another video, but let's see how this works in practice, and I'll keep you posted on that. So yeah, um I'm actually thinking of creating some masterclasses or sessions where you can join, because all this is in a public repo, right? So you can just clone Micah.ai if you go to Convocat on GitHub. It's there. It's all yours. Happy to see what you'll be doing with it. I won't be accepting any merge requests. Can't be bothered. This is my stuff. But this is pretty cool. Honestly. Yeah. Very happy with that. Okay, that's it for now. Groetjes. Have a wonderful Monday. En tot ziens. Talk soon.